All
What
right.
is going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 6 already of the Coach and the Couch Potato. As always, I'm Jeremy the Couch Potato. Opposite side of the screen, we got Coach Slate. What is going on, sir? How was your week?
No, it was great, man. We are in Act 3 of Macbeth now. The kids are actually enjoying it in class. I'm pretty shocked about it. But yeah, I mean it's been a good week. The Findlay Trojans are winning some basketball games, 19-2 right now. So we got some good things going on up in Northwest Ohio. But yeah, it's been a good week, man. Glad we get the day off tomorrow too. How about you, man?
Not bad at all. The Indiana Tech Warriors bowling team finished 10th last Sunday.
Yeah.
They fell short of the cut by 25 pens.
Wow.
10th out of 78 teams in a grinder of a tournament, and then they bowled yesterday. Had a little bit of a disappointing finish, but on to the postseason now. Fingers crossed for an NAIA Nationals berth, and then
Yeah.
the sectionals for the USBC. Other than that, we've got some PBA bowling going on the TV today, and then
There we go.
the Daytona 500 got moved to tomorrow. So,
Oh man.
but yeah, so that's my week. Kind of nothing exciting. This is an episode we've been pretty excited about. It's actually one we've been trying to hammer out since we started this thing.
Yeah.
We are going to talk offensive recruits today.
Yeah.
Knock on wood, we'll get to the defensive guys next week. But
we better get to the defensive guys.
we would be remiss if we did not give a shout out to our boy James Laurinaitis.
Yeah, man.
There came some rumors, I guess you would say, that they were still entertaining and bringing in somebody to be a special teams coach. And
yeah,
for anybody that saw my tweet, I had threatened a full-blown rant if that happened. So I think Ryan Day saw that, and he didn't want to have to deal with that.
He definitely saw that and was like,
much love, Coach Day. But
yeah.
We've talked about it for weeks. I am stoked to see what happens there.
Yeah, man. James Laurinaitis he's obviously a Buckeye legend. For those who don't know, I'm sure if you're listening to us, you probably know exactly who it is. Little animal. It's 3-time All-American at Ohio State, like at linebacker. Like, just to think about that, being an All-American 3 times, like what a special player. Obviously he's a Buckeye legend. He did some great things in the NFL, man. One of the things I loved about him in the NFL was, 7 straight years of starting 16 straight games. Like, did not miss a game for 7 consecutive years. Like, that is just mind-blowing, that the fact
That's
that
wild.
you in the NFL, like, I played at a much lower level at Urbana University, and making it through 12 games was brutal. But 16 at the NFL level for 7 straight years, it's a big time. He left when he retired. He was the St. Louis Rams, well, just the Rams now, the all-time leading tackler. And so, like, that's pretty cool. And to have that back on the staff at Ohio State in a full-time role, it's going to help out recruiting so much. I mean, these recruits want to know what you've done, and they want to know, like, were you able to have success at the next level, or were you able to coach at the next level? And he was able to be, an all-time great for his NFL franchise, on top of being an absolute dog at Ohio State. So it's going to have a huge, huge, huge impact on the recruiting trail, I think, because he knows what it takes to get to that next level.
Absolutely. So for, probably from here on out, we finally have no coaching talk.
Yeah.
So let's just dive into the good stuff.
Let's do it.
I made my list, and it's essentially, I start, with rankings. I mean, obviously rankings are relevant now.
Yeah.
But on the offensive side of the ball, this class starts with Jeremiah Smith.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kid out of Hollywood, Florida. We always talk about the Glenville pipeline in Ohio. Jeremiah plays 7-on-7 for the South Florida Express. That's a pipeline, dog.
That is yeah, it's turned
those
into
boys
one.
Bring it.
Yeah.
This kid is the number 1 recruit overall. So therefore, he's the number 1 wide receiver, the number 1 player in the state of Florida. 6'3", 215, a state champion hurdler. So he's got some freaky athleticism. I did not know until this week that he's Geno Smith's cousin.
I did not know that either.
So talk about some bloodlines.
Yeah, man, that's awesome.
This kid he'll play as a freshman. There's zero doubt.
For sure.
Thing that stands out to me is for a receiver, especially, he's really humble.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the kid is all about business and wants to be the best.
Yep.
He's not afraid of competition. The report from the Army game was one of the things that really jumped out to me. Just like when we've talked about Arch Manning before, and I talked about how he doesn't camp or didn't camp, and that really rubbed me wrong. Camps aren't an end all be all, but camps go a long way in telling you character. And at the Army Bowl, they said Jeremiah Smith made sure he was at the front of every line because he wanted to maximize reps against the best competition possible.
That's awesome. Yeah, man, he's a freak of nature. To be that big already, legitimately 6'3", 215 pounds. I mean, he is a generational talent. He can run great routes. He's going to pluck the ball out of the sky. He's going to be physical. I think it'll be interesting to see how his body develops as he goes through, obviously this spring and then, his 3 years that he's going to be at Ohio State. It'll be interesting to see how his body develops and how big that he actually gets. Because the 215 pounds, I think that's a pretty accurate size for him. So I'm excited to see that development because I think he's got a chance to be a pretty unguardable target for whoever's at quarterback. And like you said, I think he's going to come in as a freshman, and I'm not going to say he's going to start, but I think he's going to have meaningful snaps, with Emeka, who I think is going to be on the outside, and then Carnell Tate at receiver as well on the outside. I think he'll be in a rotation of some sort with those three. It'll be interesting to see how they handle the slot as well. They could always bump Emeka down into the slot, and you can have a rotation with him and Brandon Ennis. So it'll just be interesting to see how they handle that rotation. But he's a guy that day one on campus, he's gonna have to see the field.
Oh, without a doubt. So yeah, I mean he is by far the crown jewel, I guess you would say, on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah.
The recruitment got a little nerve-wracking there at the end, at least in the public eye. You hear Hartline and Day talk, and they don't know that there was ever that wavering that there seemed to be. But South Florida kid, you never know. But that SFE pipeline is
real.
Pretty crazy. With the receiver, you got to have somebody throw him the rock.
Yeah.
So, we've talked about Julian Sayin, who you could technically put in this class, but since we've talked about him so much, I didn't include him on the list. But the guy who has been committed to that position, Air Noland, in a way, I almost feel like he's sliding under the radar now. Especially once Sayin came in, and obviously, we had Dylan Raiola committed, and that whole catastrophe, or so it seemed like at the time. But I think at the end of the day, that's going to be addition by subtraction.
I agree 100%.
So with Air, the biggest thing, again, he's a state champion, plays on a pretty high level down there in Georgia, had some pretty potent offenses, especially his junior year. I think it was the year that they set the record for most points scored in a season in the state of Georgia.
Yeah.
Senior year, and I think this might be why he kind of has fallen out of the public eye. He didn't have a lot of weapons. Like I watched a few, and he's making throws that like if he's throwing to a Jeremiah Smith's going to make the play.
Yeah,
and he's a lefty, which is cool to see. It's not something we see at OSU a lot.
Yeah, and Air. First off, his real name is Prentice, and I love that name. I think it's a fantastic name.
It is.
But Air is definitely gone under the radar, man. I think that obviously bringing in Julian Sayin, the number one quarterback in the country, he was like perceived as to be the crown jewel of that class, even above Raiola. And people at the beginning thought we just kind of settled for Air. But I was like, man, like this kid is special. He's a borderline 5-star kid. The one thing I love about him is that he is a lefty. I don't know what it is, but maybe it's Michael Penix, and he's kind of won me over as that lefty. But he does kind of remind me of Michael Penix a little bit. Like I think he's got that type of ability. He's a very good athlete. He can run when he has to. I'm excited for him. I think he's a pretty accurate passer. I don't know if he's on the same level as Julian Sand, but I think that, the competition between those two has, and I said this on our earlier episode, has the potential to be that Dwayne Haskins, Joe Burrow type competition. I think we've got two solid quarterbacks, and I think Aaron Nolan is very, very, very capable of being the guy here at Ohio State. And one of the things that I loved about him, it was right after we had signed or gotten Julian Sand to transfer to Ohio State. It was you were watching it on one of the episodes. Caitlin Clark, at Ohio State, the girls upset Iowa, and people stormed the court, and Aaron Nolan was one of the people that storms the court.
Yep.
And he's like taking selfies, and he just like, you could tell he's embracing being a Buckeye. And I always love seeing that, to have him run on the court, in a big moment, supporting another Buckeye sport. Like I thought that was pretty cool, man. And I think it spoke to his character as well. So I'm excited for that battle. I think either one of them could be the guy for us, but Aaron Nolan should not be underestimated. I mean, he has all the tools to be, a very, very, very good quarterback for us in the future.
Yeah. And that Joe, I'm going to go off on a tangent real quick. The Joe Burrow, Dwayne Haskins battle, so many people hold that battle against Ohio State. And what a lot of people don't realize is that Joe Burrow was hurt.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that makes a difference or not, because I think what Dwayne did in college was, he put up killer numbers. And then the next year, Joe had that 19 season, with Chase and Jay Jettas. And I mean, kudos to both of them. And the fact that you see Joe Burrow at the Woody tells you that there are no hard feelings. Everything happens for a reason.
Yeah. And like you said, God rest his soul, Dwayne threw 50 touchdowns that year. Like, the dude played out of his mind. And, and Joe Burrow had an opportunity to go to LSU and be the guy for Coach O. Like, and if you want to liken, a season, Joe Burrow's first year in LSU probably wasn't his best, but it was his first year as a starter. But Dwayne just took off from the time Dwayne was in that Michigan game when he had to come in at the end, or whenever it was, when it was it JT that got injured and he had to come in and he had to go down. He let us down for a score, from that moment until he left Ohio State, like, Dwayne was unreal. Like, and the fact that, that gets held against, the coaching staff a little bit, is just mind blowing. They were both first round picks. They both had fantastic seasons. They both, were one the Heisman, one was a Heisman finalist. Like, you couldn't really, in my opinion, it was 1A, 1B legitimately. And so, if we can have another quarterback battle like that, those are the things that I'm excited about, especially with the two guys we have in this class.
Yeah. And, that game where Dwayne came in, there's a video, I think it's still on YouTube. It was from a documentary, the Michigan coaches box. When Dwayne, they're bringing seven, and I think they call it blitz, and he just tears them apart.
Yeah.
R.I.P. Dwayne.
Man.
The next guy on the list is, excuse me, probably the most quiet recruitment of the class, and that's James Peoples.
Yeah.
Up until the day before signing day, you also had Jordan Lyle in that class at running back. But Lyle committed after a visit, canceled every other visit that he had. And, this is a kid who's the number 8 running back in the country.
Yeah.
Excuse me. 5'10", 190. Reminds me of another kid we went to Texas and got a lot. Both on the field and in the recruitment. He's a J.K. Dobbins clone.
He is.
Anytime a kid from Texas, sticks with the recruitment like that and shuts it down, that's a win. So I'm excited to see this kid. And honestly, it's a position of need. He very well may see the field this year.
Yeah. And the J.K. Dobbins comparisons for him, it's much more than just the physical stature of them as well. Like, he runs like JK, and he runs violent, he runs hard. That 190, he won't be 190 for long.
No.
I'll just say that. He's going to be well over 200 pounds by the time the season starts. The kid has, I call those type of running backs throwbacks. The more you give them the ball, the better they get. And JK was so much fun to watch. And so for that to be the comparison between, James Peoples and JK, I think that bodes well for James. Like you said, the running back room isn't, we did get Quinshawn. We obviously got Trey to come back. We have Dallin Hayden, but after that, it's kind of a question mark. So there's a good chance like he gets carries this year. We don't know, will Dallin stick around? I hope so. I think Dallin's got a potential to be a dude for us as well. So it'll be interesting to see how that all shakes out. But James Peoples is one of my favorite recruits in this class. This dude he's special. He just runs hard, and he's a throwback type running back that is going to fall forward. He's going to keep fighting for those yards, man. And so Buckeye fans should be really excited about James Peoples.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love JK. So if we get 3/4 of that type of production from the kid, let's go.
JK was the man.
So moving to one of the O linemen in the class, Ian Moore. This was kind of this poor kid, I feel like his stock has been quite tumultuous. Initially, if I remember right, he was like the number 1 tackle in the country at one point when the lists first started coming out.
Yeah, he was a top 60 player in the country. When he started getting his 24/7 and all those recruiting services rankings, he was a top 60 player in the country.
That's wild. And so now, not only is he not even being looked at as a tackle, everybody's considering him an interior guy, which with his frame, I find a little bit interesting because this is a kid that measured 6'6", 315.
Yeah.
To me, that screams tackle.
Yes.
But they say that he's so athletic that's part of what they think may move him inside. He pulls well. Any way you cut it, obviously you very rarely expect to see a kid come in as a freshman and start. So the nice thing is he's going to have a year, most likely, if not 2, to find out where he's really going to be home. His feet are great. He's got athletic feet. I watched a little bit of his tape, and again, this is more your wheelhouse, but to me his hands seemed wonky at times. He seemed more like a puncher. Which I feel like that's more of a D-line type of trait, but the kid's got all the potential in the world.
Yeah, he does have a ton of potential. Like you said, Ian Moore is from Indiana. I always will pound the table for Midwest kids, especially on the offensive line. He is a little bit of a stabber with his hands, but he's got violent hands. When those hands get on you, it's trouble. And like you said, athletically, to be 6'6", 315, he's a fluid athlete. And, the thing that you could say hurt him when it came to his recruiting was once he made his decision, he was done doing camps and stuff. He was, this is where I want to go. I want to be a Buckeye. I don't really need to go do anything else. I'm just going to focus on being a high school kid. And, I kudos to people and young men who are willing, young men and women who are willing to do that when they make their commitment to a school and show that loyalty to the school. Like, kudos to you guys. I will always, always, always root for you. He went to the Army or the All-American Bowl in San Antonio and freaking balled out. He played out of his mind down there. And that athleticism that started to show up, and he took a ton of reps at tackle. And, so I get why you would maybe want to move him inside because of athleticism, but tackles need to be athletic as well. And what we're doing with Chip Kelly offensively, whether it's the outside zone schemes, the some of the gap schemes where the guard and tackle are both pulling, I think you need to have that athleticism at both areas, guard and tackle. So he does provide that position versatility, but man, I think I think because we missed out on Jordan Seaton and a few other guys that he often gets overlooked. But Ian Moore is a kid that I am very excited for. I think he could be that guy who is, wearing the number 98 jersey, kind of like Luke Montgomery did for us this year, as that 6th or 7th lineman that comes in those jumbo packages. So Ian Moore is a kid that we should all be excited about. I think he's got tremendous potential and as an all-conference type player once he becomes one of the guys up front.
Yeah, definitely excited for him. But I'm also excited for these next two guys. We're going to group them together.
Yeah.
And that's the Armstrong brothers, Deontay and Devontae.
Yeah.
Any kids from Cleveland St. Ed's, I will always give love to. Shout out Nate Oliver.
That offensive line is like a cheat code for high school. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you talk about road graders. Had road graders. Deontay plays tackle, or did play tackle. 6'5", 270. And Devontae is 6'5", 295, playing guard. Biggest thing that stands out to me about these guys is they are leaders. These kids were the leaders of this class. I don't know that I've seen a recruit's Twitter be followed the way that these boys got followed. They were great foreshadowers and it wasn't just with the 24 class. They have latched into a lot of the 25 guys and are out here talking to those guys. Another thing, state champions again. You're going to see a trend. As we go through a lot of these kids are all super, super talented, but they've also had success on the field. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how they project. I mean, especially Deontay at 270. The frame's there, but it'll be interesting to see. I mean, obviously that's the build of a guard at that point. But freaky athletes, and just excited to have those two. And like I said, anytime you can go get Ohio kids who have the respect of the kids across the nation to be the leaders of your class, that's a huge win.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I forget which one of the twins, but one of them started out as a junior and he was playing some JV minutes. Like it wasn't, their development kind of happened over time. If you see them, they're very lean bodies. Like they are a lot, in my opinion, a lot like Luke Montgomery, a lot like, the Paris Johnsons. Like they're just not meant to be those 330-pound like monsters. They are just lean kids. Deontay actually posted on his Twitter the other day. He had been there a little over a month now, and he had gained. He was 292. So yeah, so in that short amount of time, and being having the resources and the food and all those different things, like he's already put on 15-20 pounds, and that's awesome. Shout out to Coach Mick for getting that done. But I am excited about both of these guys. And not even talking about their ability on the field. And you mentioned this, it's their leadership. I love when the offensive linemen take control of a team. I think the best teams, their leaders they find a way to be offensive linemen, in my opinion, unless you've got just, Pat Mahomes at quarterback or somebody. I love those teams who have those leaders on the offensive line, because it is the offensive and defensive lines that set the tone for the season. They set the tone for each game. And to have those vocal leaders, it holds yourself accountable. You can't step up and be, this vocal leader and not back it up with your play. So I think these guys are going to be two people that speak up often, and will be future captains, but you're also going to see their play as well. I said it in a previous episode, man, Coach Fry has a type. He's got a type of offensive lineman that he's trying to recruit. And I can't think of two better guys that just fit that type. Those lean, athletic bodies who will be able to play multiple spots, can play in multiple schemes. I'm excited for these two guys. I don't know how soon they'll see the field. It might be, their redshirt sophomore year before they see the field or anything like that, because they will need to develop. and get more size to them. But man, when they do, I think they have tremendous potential, both of them. So I'm excited for both those guys, man.
Yeah, for sure. Next guy on the list, I almost feel like if you're going to award a most polarizing recruit, just because so many people were questioning it, I guess, is Sam Williams Dixon.
Yeah.
Everybody, the last couple of years has really fell in love with Xavier Johnson. This kid almost has the potential to be a better version of Xavier Johnson, and that's setting a bar really high.
Yeah.
Xavier Johnson is a stud. He's going to get a crack to play on Sundays. Sam Williams Dixon is built out of that same exact mold, 5'11", 200-ish pounds. And one thing that jumps out to me is this is a kid that sought out competition.
Yep.
Played at West Holmes, who's no slouch of a program.
No, West Holmes is a pretty good program.
But he said, you know what? If I really want to see where I stand, I'm gonna move to Pickerington.
Yep.
And all three Pickerington schools are decent. And I believe he ended up at North.
Yep.
Which is probably the one to go to.
Mm-hmm.
And he played at North and he played well and had a lot of success. Enrolled early. He's actually the last of the offensive guys that we have and will talk about that enrolled early. And I'm a huge advocate for that. If you have the potential or the ability to do that through your school,
absolutely,
especially in football.
Yeah.
Because the advantages that you get of that extra semester of not only practice, but becoming acclimated to college life. You are on such a tight schedule. And, ideally down the road, we're working on possibly having a couple of guys, bump in here and talk about some of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You basically are told when you're going to eat, when you're going to work out, how much you're going to eat. This is your calorie goal. So I think he's a kid that could benefit from that a lot.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%, man. Sam Williams Dixon, I got it in my notes. He's my favorite recruit in this class. The Xavier Johnson comparison is so adequate and timely. I think Sam Williams Dixon, like this year at Pick North, he only got to play 5 games because of the transfer rules. I don't know how it worked out, whether there was a permanent residency or not. Like I don't know all that, but he only got to play 5 games for Pick North. So there's not a ton of film that's out there on him, but in that first 5 games, like their coach flat out says, like, this dude runs different. Like he runs violent, he runs hard, and he can also bump out and play wide receiver as well. It's got fantastic hands, phenomenal athleticism. This is a kid, we used to talk about the Percy Harvin role and things like that way back when, and it was Philly Brown and all those guys who kind of filled that role. I think this guy gives me some Curtis Samuel vibes. Those are big shoes to fill, so I'm not going to put that on him, but you get those similar vibes from him. And I think that is so important in this offense, especially if we can keep Chip Kelly for a few years. I think having these versatile players, you don't think plays, you think players. What can I do to get this guy the ball? Because, I can throw him a now screen. He's going to go take it 50 yards. Like he's going to make somebody miss and he's going to have a big play. So he's a kid that I'm excited about, man. That I just, Xavier Johnson was one of my favorite players of the last 2 years. We just didn't have another one. You know what I mean? Like, man, it would have been nice to be able to have somebody else to see if they could fill that role. And honestly, I think with Sam Williams Dixon and Brandon Ennis, I think those are 2 guys that you're going to see kind of fill that gap, especially Ennis this year. But you touched on something, man, enrolling early. So obviously you've had the opportunity to coach some guys who have had the opportunity to play at big programs. One's at Ohio State right now. And when you say like you are told what to eat, last year when Luke enrolled early, we got the opportunity to go down for a few of the winter workouts, and Luke was kind of just giving, us a tour of the facility and going over the training tables and the food that they get. Whoever makes the fried chicken in the Woody is the best fried chicken I've ever had in my entire life. Like it is phenomenal. You have to ask my dad about it because he went back for a few plates when I took my dad down there.
Oh, yeah.
But but they have like individual, goals. Hey, your goal is to put on 15 pounds of muscle. Here are the supplements that you need to take. Here are the snacks that you need to have. And after they're done working out, like those things are readily available to them as soon as the workouts are done. And so like there's really no excuse for the kids not to be putting on that muscle and that bulk and things like that. So enrolling early, like you said, is such an asset for those kids because they get acclimated so much sooner. And once you get to summer, it's almost like you've been there for a year. You've already been developed. You're already around the guys. You've got a good idea of what the coaching staff is like and how you're going to be coached. So the kids that can enroll early, if that's something that you're able to do and graduate early, like, hey, support it, man. We also support you wanting to be a high school kid. It's the only time in your life you're ever going to get to do it. So I see both sides of it, but enrolling early definitely has some major benefits, man.
For sure. I'm glad to hear we've stepped the fried chicken up. Fried chicken game up, since it cost us Marvin Wilson back in the day. Props to Urban and Coach Day for getting a new chef on staff because even that matters.
Dude, I'm telling you, it is the best. It is the best chicken I've ever had in my entire life.
Love it. So speaking of, embracing being a high school kid, probably my favorite recruit in the class, Milan Graham.
Yeah.
Number 1 player in the state of Indiana, number 7 wide receiver overall from New Haven, little suburb outside of Fort Wayne. Drive by the school every time I go to see my son at college. Nice field, real nice field for a small town too. This kid is a stud.
Yeah, he is.
He's fast. Whereas Jeremiah Smith has the ability to go mosh you. This kid's twitchy. He's going to make you, not be able to guard him.
Yeah.
Also returns kicks and does it really, really well.
Yeah.
Obviously, at Ohio State, a staple of our receivers has always been their blocking. That's the one thing that stands out to me that he needs to work on a little bit. But it makes sense when you look at like a lot of his NFL comparisons. A lot of people compare him to CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah.
Kind of a finesse guy, not necessarily going to get in there and get dirty. Now, I think Milan will. I think once he gets to OSU, because if you don't block, you're not going to play.
Exactly.
So I am excited to see this kid. He's going to be that burner. Like Olave was, Devin Smith, those type of guys.
Devin Smith, man, what an underrated dude. They don't talk about him enough. But, Milan Graham is one of my favorite players in this recruiting class as well. I think he's got potential to be an elite slot receiver. He's obviously got the speed to be on the outside as the X, but I think he has potential in the slot to be such a matchup nightmare for defenses when he becomes, a readily available receiver. Like he's obviously enjoying high school right now. When he gets there, he's going to have to get some weight on. Like you said, talking about blocking, you said it best. Heartline, if you're not going to block, you're not going to play. And so I'm excited to see those type of things develop in him. But this kid, the route running, the ball skills, the overall top end speed, this kid possesses it all. And because, we've got Jeremiah Smith, this Milan's gone completely under the radar, like most under the radar 5-star receiver I think we've ever had. And I think he's got potential to be a dude for us in the future. And I'm excited for him, man. I hate throwing out those comparisons, but you said Olave, his build gives me some Garrett Wilson vibes too. I think he might be a little faster than Garrett Wilson was. But man, he gives me some really good vibes. And this is a kid that Heartline, once he gets his hands on him, it's going to be a dangerous combination with him and Jeremiah Smith.
Yeah, and we got in on him early. We were way out in front, which speaks volumes to Heartline's eye.
Yeah.
The next guy, again, kind of an under the radar guy who is really good. Max LeBlanc. There's really no other way to put it. This is a kid who just started playing football 4 or 5 years ago.
Yep.
Ended up as the number 5 player in the state of Tennessee as a tight end. You hear the name LeBlanc, and obviously, you're like, hey, and he is from Canada.
He from Canada.
From Montreal to Chattanooga.
Yeah.
His biggest strength is probably his blocking right now, but he's really good. He's got great hands.
Yeah.
And that's only going to improve. I think, you saw what we did with Farmer Gronk this year.
Yep.
This is a kid who, put a little bit of weight on and could be right there with that.
Yeah. And I think, Keenan Bailey has done a really good job of identifying the type of tight ends that are going to make this offense really thrive. Going out and getting a Kazmarek in the transfer portal, I think LeBlanc has a potential to develop into that type of player for us as far as his frame is concerned. That's going to be an exceptional blocker, but has the ball skills to go be an impact player in the receiving game as well. So I think this is a kid, like you said, he's very good, kind of gone under the radar, identified that he really wanted to be really good at football, and he left Canada to come down to Tennessee to play. And, that shows me that he's serious about it. He could have stayed in Canada and played up there and probably would have got recruited and everything. But to come down to Chattanooga to play for the Baylor School, which is a good program in Tennessee, I think that's a pretty big deal and shows you how serious he is. And I think this is another kid, man. Get him in the weight room, get some weight on him. I think he's got potential to really round out that tight end room. With Galani, I'm thinking years ahead with Galani and some of the other guys that we're going to have for the next couple of years. I think he's going to be somebody that could end up being a standout guy for us.
Yeah, and he's not the only tight end in the class. Potentially the most X factor guy in this class. We're going to use the position tight end very loosely with him right now.
Yes, very loosely.
And that's the Marion Whitten from Cleveland Glenville. To go with our trend, they won a state title this year.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother discussion in Ohio high school football. You and I think very similarly about it. There's a lot of folks out there that don't, and that may be something we get the opportunity to dive into, especially like this summer.
Yeah, that'll be fun. That'll be really fun.
That'll be a really great discussion. But on my notes, I literally wrote freaky ass athlete. There's a very real chance he ends up at receiver if we're being honest. Yeah. 6'4", 205, came to Glenville as a quarterback.
Yeah.
So the kid's athletic, and obviously he's also really, really smart.
Yes.
Caught 2 TDs in the state title game. Also went to the we'll call it the Adidas Bowl. It's gone so many different names, but it's always going to be the Army All-American game to me.
Yeah.
One MVP down there.
Yeah.
And that's a game where there were some dudes at.
Yeah.
And probably the funniest part, of Demarion's recruitment is he was the butt of the grown man recruiting, or the SEC recruiting tweet by Kentucky's coach when he decided to come to Ohio State. Best part about that, if you haven't heard about that, is you have the head coach of a football essentially taking a stab at a kid, and he spelled grown GROAN. So look it up if you want some Monday morning laughter. It's bad enough that you're gonna trash a kid for not coming to Kentucky, but then you're gonna have a spelling error like that.
Yeah.
This kid is awesome though. There's just something about those tar-blooded kids, man. That those black and red unis, and they magnify everything. And when a kid stands out, they stand out. This kid stood out.
Yeah. So I had an opportunity to go up against Glenville the last 2 years in a 7-on-7 tournament over in Mansfield, Ohio. Shout out to Chokey Bradley, the head coach of Mansfield Senior, does a great job over there, and he puts on a pretty good tournament. And it is some real competition. It was us, it was Springfield, it was Glenville. And there was a Columbus school. I can't remember which one, but I think there was like 5 or 6 schools over there. And Glenville, obviously talented. The talent that team has is unreal. And, I'm a Buckeye fan, but when I'm out there on the field, like, I'm a coach. And so, like, you got Bryce West out there, you got some other dudes out there, and it's fun to see our guys go up against that level of competition. Well, there was this kid who goes from quarterback to receiver and just starts playing out of his mind, and he's super fast and he could run, and then he flips over and he starts doing some stuff on defense. And I'm like, who the heck is this kid? Like, he wasn't here last year. Like, who is this dude? Turns out it was Marion Whitten. He was the best player on the field, and that included Aaron Scott and Bryce West. Like, when I say he's a freak athlete, I mean he's a freak athlete. When one of our corners lined up against him, and we're like, "Oh, coach, man, I'm gonna have to, lace my cleats up a little bit," and I'm like, yeah, you're gonna have to. This kid's special." So he's got everything that you would want in a receiver. He's got the ball skills. He's got the speed. He's 205 pounds. He's going to get bigger. The thing is, so he's a very lean body. Like, I don't know exactly how big he's going to get, but he's a very lean body. So, like you said earlier, you loosely using the tight end is very adequate. I think, man, like you said, freak athlete. He's got potential to just be an absolute stud. And one thing I love about Glenville, obviously we've had a pipeline with Glenville for a while. They won. They beat us in the championship of that game. Okay, of that 7-on-7 tournament. And we gave them a game, and Coach Ginn was not happy about that. And he wasn't upset that, we played them tough. He was upset that, they had left some trash on the field and that they had left some stuff up in the stands. When I tell you they ran 20 gassers after they had just won the championship, they ran 20 gassers and not one kid said a word. They just did it. And Coach Ginn was laying into him the whole time. And so when I saw that, and now you think of Bryce West, and you think of Arvell Reese last year, and you think of Marion Whitten, you're getting kids that have been coached hard, and they've been coached tough, and that are disciplined kids that understand that they're playing for something bigger than just themselves. And so I'm excited. Anytime we can get kids from Glenville, like, hey, let's go. Let's make it happen, because they are well coached, and they know how to be coached hard, and know how to play the game of football, man.
Yeah, I mean, we've always said, we both think extremely highly of Coach Ginn, and that guy is a leader of men.
Yeah.
He's not just a football coach; he's a life coach.
Yeah.
And now he's got Teddy coached. I think it's a 14U team, and they're the number one team in the country. I mean, talk about an experience, man. To go from Ted Jr. to Ted Sr. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. And you hit on the Mansfield Senior program real quick. Those guys get it. They've done, since NIL, they've done an OSU camp the last 2 years over there. And we can't discuss Mansfield Senior, and we like to give random shout outs to our boys. So you can't mention Mansfield Senior and not get a shout out Corey Chapman.
Yeah.
Another dude who gets it.
Another dude that gets it, but was knocked out of the playoffs by Marion Harding in the year 2000. Don't ever let chat forget that. Okay.
We don't.
We're giving some Mansfield Senior love, but don't forget that we grew up not liking them.
Exactly. Chat bowls on Monday nights with Joey Biederman, and I think every Monday night Joey Biederman tells them about not getting them out of the playoffs.
Yes.
So the last guy in this class, I don't like to use the word project. I really don't, because obviously if you're getting an Ohio State scholarship offer, you can play football.
Yeah.
He was a late ad. Actually flipped him from Northwestern.
Mm-hmm.
And that's Gabe VC.
Yeah.
6'5", 283, probably the most raw of all of the O-line recruits. But another kid who's kind of a sneaky athlete.
Yeah.
He's not polished by any means. Just like we talked about the Armstrong twins, most likely not seeing the field until, a redshirt sophomore type season. I feel like that's definitely the situation here. But if this is a kid that, if he embraces the process, can be really good.
Yeah. No, I think he can be too. And I don't want to overlook the fact that he was at Northwestern. I know Northwestern kind of went through some things this year with Coach Fitzgerald and everything, but Northwestern is also the same program that produced Rashawn Slater, who was a first-round draft pick in the NFL. So I don't want to gloss over the fact that Northwestern may not be a top-tier program, but they've produced some pretty good players and some pretty good offensive linemen specifically. I think, obviously Northwestern, you get accepted there, you are a very, very, very bright young man or
Yes.
woman. He is a very smart kid. I think he is a very good athlete. Again, he fits the exact mold of what Coach Fry has been wanting to bring in. That kind of athlete that can be, both a gap scheme and a zone scheme guy. I love the fact that we are seeing that. We may miss out on a big fish, and if we miss out on that big fish, they're going to get guys that are specific to our scheme, and I love that. I don't like looking at the stars. I like looking at what they can do in a scheme, and I think Gabe VC will have some pretty good traits as an offensive lineman. Will likely be an interior guy. But he's got a very good athleticism, man, and that can't be overlooked. I know Coach Fry is big on, hey, you're going to develop in the program in the first 2 years, and then by year 3, you should be able to play. And so, he is a guy that I think could project into that year 3 of having the opportunity to see the field. I think he's got to get bigger, but I think he's got the athleticism to play at this level. And I don't want to overlook that he was committed to Northwestern, because Northwestern has produced some pretty good offensive linemen in their history.
Yeah, absolutely. And you hit on it every time we talk about an O lineman, but you look at this O line class, and the word I used for all of these guys is versatile.
Yeah.
You have often talked about Coach Fry having that type, and I'm excited to see how each of these guys molds, where they find a role. Because I really think that every O-line guy in this class has the potential to play at some point.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. And I think last year's class, with Luke and those guys, I think often gets overlooked a little bit as well. I mean, Josh Padilla is a very good player, 4-star kid, and the Miles Walker. You talk about somebody who's an athlete. That kid has tremendous upside, who was in the last year's recruiting class as a tackle. So I think between those two classes and marrying them together, I think the future of our offensive line is pretty good, especially if we can establish our run game in the way that Chip Kelly wants it to be established. And then it's able to stay at that level moving forward. I think every offensive lineman that we have recruited or brought in through the transfer portal hits. I mean, they fit that mold to a T. So it's a fun group, man. And I think they get a lot of bad rep, from this year. But I think the guys that we have, the young guys that we have, I think they're going to step up in a major way for us.
For sure. We would, obviously, anytime you're talking about a class, you got to kind of throw some superlatives out there. So most excited to see out of the offensive guys. I think I kind of tipped my hand, but I'm going with Milan Graham. What about you?
Listen, I gotta go with JJ. I gotta go with Jeremiah Smith. I mean, just a freak of nature, and it's a generational talent. And when you get compared to Julio Jones, I just want to see that on the field immediately. So I'm definitely excited for Jeremiah Smith at receiver.
And the reason I didn't go with him as my most excited to see is because, as far as who I think will be the most successful, I went with Jeremiah.
Yeah.
You hear can't miss, 5-star plus, all of those things, and I think it's there. Every week you didn't know what highlight reel he was going to put either somebody on or he was going to create for himself.
Yeah.
And I think that doesn't skip a beat this fall.
Yeah. I think the guy that's going to have the most success, I'm not going to say a quarterback, but I'm going to say one of the quarterbacks in this class is going to eventually be a Heisman Trophy finalist. I think the two guys that we have in this class, and Julian Sand and Aaron Nolan, have that type of potential. I think if they take the coaching and they just continue to grind and work hard and just truly try to embody what it means to be a Buckeye, I think you're going to see them be those guys. The other person I'm excited about is Ian Moore. I think Ian Moore is going to be, an all Big Ten type of offensive lineman for us. And I just want to see the offensive linemen start getting some love, man. They are in there working and grinding every single day. Coach Fry is chewing their faces off in practice, even after wins. They don't feel like they've won anything, and that's college football for you. But I want to start seeing them get some love. So Ian Moore is a guy that I'm excited about. I think he's going to be a very, very good player for us in the future.
And then our favorite recruit on the offensive side, I had to do a tie because one of them is, from the sheer leadership point, and then I think the other one is just potential. From the leadership side, it's got to be the Armstrong twins. I grouped them together because realistically, they seem like they are one and the same as far as their demeanor. And then on the field, it's Whitten. I'm excited to see. He's fun to watch. I remember, they played. I think it was Liberty. They played this year, week 1.
Yeah, it was.
Seeing tweets from that game, and everybody's like, "Oh my God, who is this kid? We can't guard him."
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see that.
Yeah, my favorite recruit would be Sam Williams Dixon. I said it earlier. I love his versatility. I will always root for those Curtis Samuel type kids, man. I think those are guys who just get the ball in their hands and you just let them go to work. And so I think he's got the potential to be that. And he's from Ohio. I'm always going to root for him. He kind of gone under the radar as his 3-star athlete. So he's kind of, overlooked a little bit, but he went to Pick North, not afraid of competition. I think he's got potential to be that Xavier Johnson type. And, I'm excited to see that moving forward.
All right. So that kind of ties up, the offensive side of the ball. Next week doing defense will be a lot of fun. I'm excited to hear, your technical stuff on a lot of those guys because there's some studs there.
Yeah, there are.
You dropped a couple of their names already, Bryce West, Aaron Scott. And overall in this class, if there's an award for best announcement, it's got to be Aaron Scott.
Yeah, it was pretty sweet, man.
So, yeah, we'll hit on that a little bit more. And then, we can't talk recruiting without making the Mount Rushmore recruiting related.
Yeah.
So as we kind of discuss, trying to figure out what we want to talk about on that, rather than just saying our 4 favorite recruits, because that's essentially your 4 favorite players in a lot of ways. We decided to do 4 biggest recruiting wins. So when you look at a recruiting win, it can mean a couple of different things. And I tried to embody that in the ones I chose. I don't normally do my Mount Rushmores in an order. But on this one, there's a clear-cut number 1.
Okay.
And that goes to when Coach Meyer went to Tennessee and grabbed a safety by the name of Von Bell.
Yeah.
Nobody in America thought Von Bell was coming to Ohio State.
Heck no.
Von rolls out, and talk about just a well-spoken, educated kid.
Yeah.
He rolls out
suspenders on.
Yes, the suspenders, the glasses, and commits to Ohio State.
Yeah.
That set the tone for the Urban Meyer era.
Absolutely, it did.
Vaughn has gone on since then to say, Coach Meyer sat in my house and said, you can either play for a natty with us or you can play for a natty against us.
Yep.
And that was just to go into the South and pull a kid, Georgia, Bama, Tennessee, all the Southern schools we're looking at. To me, that's far and away the biggest win, especially since recruiting became a huge, huge thing.
Yeah.
After that, CJ Stroud, as crazy as it sounds.
Okay.
Kind of came out of nowhere.
He did.
And then, to go to Cali, get a kid who was that good. But the reason I look at this as a big win is if you look at 2 of the other hats on the table when he announced, they were Georgia and Michigan.
Really? I didn't realize that. Wow. Okay.
So to not only go get him, but to keep him away from those guys, that was huge. And then we go back south for the next one, and that's Raekwon McMillan.
Oh, Quan the truth.
Yes. Yeah, I wish we would have got Richard. The year after, LeCount would have been nasty.
That would have been pretty nasty.
By all accounts, we had him at one point, and then but to go to Georgia's backyard, get a kid who, got playing time, obviously did well at OSU. I don't think we did him the disservice we did Baron Browning, but I think we did do him a little bit of disservice. And then the fourth one, we're gonna go back to the Tressel era, and we're gonna go with TP2.
Okay, all right.
That was for Jim Tressel to be able to go to Pennsylvania, Jeanette, Pennsylvania, if we're getting real technical.
Yeah.
And grab the number one quarterback in the country who did not fit his scheme at all.
Not at all.
That was really the first non-Ohio national scale kid that Tressel really went after hard.
Yeah.
And with that came the Brew Crew. So you went to Florida and got Mike Brewster. You went to Cincy and got DeVere. I mean, you started building the blocks for where we're at now.
Yeah.
Obviously TP is extremely polarizing.
Yes.
And that's a whole nother conversation. But and then honorable mention to one that happened about a month ago, and that's Caleb Downs.
Yeah. That's a big one.
To in this day and age, be able to go get a big portal win like that. Again, not only that you're getting a kid from Bama, but you plucked him from Georgia.
Yeah.
That's a win.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we got two that are the same, so that's pretty good. The first one for me, you just mentioned it, Terrell Pryor, quarterback from Jeanette, PA. Like you said, polarizing. That's the best word to describe him. Such a polarizing prospect. If you watched his film, they played in a wing T style offense. You would think that, he would get moved to receiver or tight end. And if he did, he probably would have been a first round draft pick. He was that freaky of an athlete, but he was committed to playing quarterback, and Coach Tress let him stick at playing quarterback. And you really started to see that shift in the type of quarterback Ohio State was going to go after. And I think obviously, you can talk about Troy, and you could talk about even Stanley Jackson before that, and Krenzel, the athlete. But when you talk about getting the best athlete available at quarterback, I think, it kind of paved the way to go get a Braxton Miller type guy as well. So TP, man, like you said, polarizing. And just the fact that Tressel got him, and that wasn't a comfortable thing for Tressel. To have a quarterback that, he's maybe a way better runner than he is a passer, and having to change up some things and, start doing some zone read concepts and some spread run game stuff. I know that wasn't easy for Tress. And so TP will always be one of the top, most polarizing big wins on the recruiting trail for me. My second one, and this is one of my favorite stories, Ezekiel Elliott. So the one thing about Zeke, and people sometimes forget this, but his family had some major ties to Missouri. Some major ties to Missouri. And he committed to Ohio State, in April of 2012. But what people don't realize is his last visit was to Missouri. He took a visit a week or two before he committed to Ohio State. And he was really torn. It was tugging at the heartstrings. And if you go back and you watch his recruiting or commitment video, he's crying. And he flat out said later on in life, I wasn't crying because, this is such a huge deal. I'm crying because, I'm doing something that is just for me. And I feel like I may be letting some people down. You know what I mean? And so for him to choose Ohio State over Missouri, over the family ties, and to kind of blaze his own trail, I think that was a huge, huge thing. Obviously, everybody knows what Zeke did for us as a running back. We don't win a natty without him. The dude was phenomenal. So that was one that always stands out to me. Von Bell was probably my favorite commit that we've ever had, because I was not expecting him to pick the Buckeyes at all. Von Bell, safety out of Georgia. I thought for sure he was going to Tennessee. I was like, it's a wrap. And like you said, he came out, he's well-spoken. And I remember just hopping on Bucknuts and actually like seeing some random poster put like, oh, he picked Ohio State. And I got on YouTube really quick. I was trying to watch, like, was just mind-blowing. And Von Bell was such a stud. Like, he was so good and so talented. And so for him to pick a player or pick Ohio State, that caliber of player, consensus 5-star, top 30 player in the country, like that was a big deal. And it showed that Ohio State could go to the Deep South and go get those guys. And then the last one, and it's not because he's my favorite Buckeye ever, and it's not because his jersey's behind me, but it's Braxton freaking Miller. Okay. People don't understand how important Braxton was to the Ohio State program and where we are today. All right. This is a kid who was the number one player in Ohio and committed to Jim Tressel. He didn't commit to Urban. He committed to Jim Tressel, only for Jim Tressel to be forced to resign a year after his commitment. And Braxton never wavered. He stuck with his commitment, even knowing that Luke Fickell was going to be the interim coach. So he stuck with his commitment, number one player in the state of Ohio, top 30 player nationally, and he just wanted to be a Buckeye. Like that was it. He just wanted to be a Buckeye. And I will say this, and I will take this to the grave. I know Ohio State has a very, very big profile in college football, but I firmly believe if we don't have Braxton Miller as our quarterback, Urban Meyer's not taking this job. Urban is a very calculated human being, and he's not going to go take a job where he's not going to be able to win right away. And because of Braxton, he was able to win right away. And so I truly believe that was one of the reasons why Urban came. And then obviously that set the stage for where we are now as a program, a top 3, top 4 program in the country. And so Braxton Miller, man, like what he means to Ohio State, you could even talk about when he hurt his shoulder and he could have transferred because he had already graduated, could have transferred to Oregon, could have transferred anywhere. But he said, no, I'm going to stick here, be a Buckeye. I'm going to change my number and I'm going to play receiver because I want to go try to win a natty with my brothers. Like, what an awesome recruitment. Like, just the type of guy that Braxton is. And he's a diehard Buckeye to this day. So I'm Braxton Miller, quarterback, Huber Heights, Wayne, Springfield, Ohio, absolute freaking legend. And it's probably my number one, like, biggest recruiting win for us.
I like it. Just a couple of little caveats on all the guys that you mentioned, because some of the feedback we've gotten throughout doing this is people love it when we drop these little, just thoughts. Terrell Pryor throws the best deep ball of almost any quarterback we've ever had.
Dude.
And, one of the things that gets held against him is the Penn State game.
Yeah.
I was at that game, top of C deck. Best seat in the house, could see the entire play develop. If he's able to get past the guy who tackles him, he scores.
Yeah.
40 yards to the crib. No doubt about it. And then Zeke, you hit on the ties his family's got to Missouri. Little sister just committed to OSU to run
Yeah, I
track.
know. How cool is that?
We've already talked about the Sanchez family in the class of 25. The Elliots were kind of the Sanchez's before anything, Stacey Elliott was like Captain Buckeye. So yeah, that's cool. The fact we hit 2 of the same ones, I mean, that tells you how big they were. Next week with the defensive guys, we'll probably do the 4 biggest losses. We can't always be butterflies and rainbows. So
yeah,
we'll hit on that. That kind of wraps up all the Buckeye stuff for our weekly shout out. Since we're talking recruiting and offense, I'm gonna shout out my dude Holden Hunter.
Okay.
Guy in Ohio, senior this year, just committed and signed with ODU.
Nice.
Gonna go down there, play tackle. Well, probably actually play guard or center, truthfully.
Yeah.
4.0. Kid's a road grader, man.
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
So props to him. Had a real tough choice. ODU, Tiffin, even went to Youngstown State for a visit. So props to him. What about you?
Oh man, I got a lot of things, a lot of people I could shout out, but I want to shout out one of my students. I'm not gonna say her name, but she's in welding class and she made me this it's like these stick figures and they're doing the OHIO and she welded it for me and she surprised me with it the other day. So it's on my desk and it was pretty cool, man. She was like, "Well, I heard you're doing a podcast, so I thought you could throw this up in the background." Well, it would be here, but I left it at school. So
That's
so
awesome.
I want to shout her out, man. That was pretty cool. So
That is too cool, man. Glad that word's spreading around Trojan land up there.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
as always, thank you everybody for all the support again. We are having a blast with this. We get texts all week long. I got one the other day from a guy who, used to be one of my best friends and still to this day would do anything in the world for me if I called him. And he goes, "Man, I just want to tell you, you guys are made for this." I'm like, "Well, that's big words." I'm like,
yeah, man, that's big.
but he's like, "I keep telling all the guys at work, you're the biggest Buckeye fan I've ever known. Listening to Jared talk, he's super smart. So we're gonna keep chugging along for you guys, and
Yeah,
anything you guys want to see, let us know. As we get to the summer, especially, we're gonna try to branch out a little bit. We're gonna talk some high school football.
yep,
We're gonna dive into like that Glenville discussion, for example, and stuff like that. So yeah, shoot us some suggestions.
yeah, definitely do, man. No, it's been fun. I love doing it. Um, would be nice. The technical side of things, still got to figure some things out, but Facebook page, keep paying attention to that because I'll start dropping some more football educational type things on there so that when you're watching the games on Fridays or Saturdays or whenever you're watching, you could be like, "Oh yeah, okay, so this is what that is." So you guys may not believe it, but it makes the game a lot more fun and it will keep your blood pressure low if you understand a little bit more of what's going on. So yeah, just I'll keep dropping those nuggets and we appreciate everybody's support.
Cool deal. All right, guys. Well, that's a wrap. We will see you next week.